Madison Clark and Emily Rivers were the town's golden girls, cheerleaders, beauty queens, and the envy of everyone at Jefferson High. But behind their flawless smiles hid a secret no one could have imagined, a secret that would shatter their world and leave a community haunted forever. She had always been the image of perfection in her small town. With her bright smile, flawless hair, and sparkling eyes, she carried herself like someone who had stepped out of a magazine. Everyone knew her name: cheerleader, beauty queen, and top student. She excelled in every class, aced every test, and won every competition she entered. Her parents beamed with pride, showing off her trophies at family gatherings, and her friends admired her charm and charisma. On the surface, life seemed like a dream, but appearances can be deceiving, and the cracks beneath her polished exterior were growing wider every day. No one realized how carefully she curated her image. Every post on social media was meticulously planned, every smile photographed for maximum effect. But behind closed doors, she spent hours alone in her room, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. She struggled to meet the expectations that weighed heavily on her young shoulders. The pressure to be perfect, to always be admired, to maintain the flawless image that everyone else adored, left her feeling isolated and trapped. There were moments when she wanted to confide in someone, but fear held her back. Fear of judgment, fear of disappointing her parents, and fear of losing the identity she had spent so long building kept her silent. Her parents noticed subtle changes first. She started wearing baggier clothes even during the summer months and avoided participating in activities she once loved. She became withdrawn, spending long hours alone in her room and responding to their questions with vague answers. They chalked it up to stress, assuming that the pressures of school and competitions were finally taking their toll. Teachers and friends, too, noticed that she seemed distracted and tired, but no one thought it was anything beyond typical teenage anxiety. The outward image of a confident, poised girl masked the turbulence that raged inside her, and the truth remained hidden, carefully concealed beneath layers of charm and smiles. She began keeping secrets that no one could suspect. She kept a diary, writing down thoughts she could not say aloud, and meticulously organized her room to avoid any sign of her growing worries. She researched ways to hide discomfort and maintain appearances, searching online for solutions to problems she could not share. Every day became a delicate balancing act, keeping her grades high, her smiles bright, and her interactions friendly, all while hiding the mounting tension she felt inside. She attended parties and school events, laughed with friends, and posed for photos. Yet behind each smile was a deep anxiety that gnawed at her constantly. The duality of her life became increasingly difficult to manage. In school hallways, she was the girl everyone wanted to be: popular, beautiful, accomplished. But in the privacy of her room, she wrestled with the reality of circumstances that no one could imagine. She feared the day when the secret she carried would be exposed, the day when the fragile image of perfection would shatter. Each morning she woke determined to keep up the facade, to play the role she had perfected over the years, and each night she felt the pressure mounting, knowing that the truth was waiting, lurking just beneath the surface, threatening to undo everything she had built. The tension was unbearable, a constant reminder that even the brightest smiles can hide the darkest secrets, and that sometimes the world's perfect girl is quietly falling apart inside. The changes in her behavior became harder to ignore as the weeks passed. Friends began noticing that she skipped gym class more often, claiming vague excuses about stomach aches or cramps. She avoided tight-fitting clothing, always opting for oversized hoodies and long skirts, even when the weather was warm. Rumors began to swirl, though quietly, because no one wanted to confront the possibility of what she might be hiding. Her parents grew concerned but struggled to press the issue, unsure of how to approach the topic without pushing her further into silence. She had mastered the art of appearing normal, of slipping through their questions with practiced ease, but beneath the surface, the reality of her situation was becoming impossible to ignore. At home, she moved with a careful precision, hiding every sign that might reveal the truth. Her room became a private world where she could plan, research, and prepare. She scoured the internet in secret, learning about ways to conceal a pregnancy and researching methods for dealing with the consequences of one she was terrified to face. Each night, she cleared her search history, deleted messages, and ensured that nothing could betray the life she was determined to keep hidden. Every detail of her daily routine was calculated to maintain the illusion that everything was ordinary, that her life remained the same as it had always been. Her body began to change, though, and it became harder to disguise the truth. Clothes no longer fit the same, and movements that once felt effortless grew difficult. She tried to isolate herself, avoiding friends and school activities that might expose the secret she carried. At times, she became overwhelmed by fear and anxiety, pacing her room and trying to calm herself, knowing that any misstep could unravel everything. Despite her isolation, she remained meticulous in maintaining her image, always smiling in public, always performing the role that everyone expected. Her fear of discovery grew with each passing day. She thought constantly about the consequences if anyone found out, imagining judgment, rejection, and the end of her carefully constructed reputation. She was aware that the world she lived in valued perfection, and the revelation of her secret could destroy the admiration and support she had worked so hard to earn. The pressure was suffocating, but she refused to let it show, crafting a double life that was exhausting and terrifying in equal measure. As the weeks turned into months, the reality of the pregnancy could no longer be hidden. Her movements were slower, her body heavier, and her anxiety more acute. She had rehearsed countless explanations for sudden absences, changes in appearance, and moments when she could not maintain her composure. Each day, she balanced on a razor's edge, knowing that one slip could expose everything. The secrecy became an obsession, dominating her thoughts and dictating her actions. She created elaborate routines to avoid detection, planning meals, outings, and even social interactions with the precision of someone managing a delicate and dangerous secret. By the time the end of the school year approached, the situation reached a point where concealment was nearly impossible. Her body bore undeniable signs, and her fear of exposure became almost unbearable. Every glance from a friend or family member felt like a potential threat. Every day brought new challenges in hiding the truth, and the weight of the secret threatened to crush her. She had entered a world where the appearance of perfection was a fragile mask, and beneath it, the reality of her life teetered on the brink of collapse, waiting for the moment when the secret could no longer be contained. The night it happened began quietly, without warning or fanfare. She had locked her bedroom door, ensuring that no one would interrupt her, and dimmed the lights to create a sense of calm. Every sound outside seemed distant, muted by the thick walls of her home. Her breathing was shallow and uneven, her body tense with anticipation and fear. She knew the moment she had been dreading had arrived, and though she tried to steady herself, panic coursed through her in waves. The reality of what she was about to face was terrifying, and yet there was no one to turn to, no one who could help her navigate the situation. Hours passed in a blur of pain and confusion. She moved with a mixture of instinct and fear, guided by the urgent knowledge that she was alone and that everything depended on her ability to conceal what was happening. She had prepared for this moment in secret, gathering supplies and reading instructions she barely understood, but nothing could fully prepare her for the physical and emotional intensity of the experience. Every contraction brought a new surge of fear, every breath a reminder of the consequences she faced. The room, once familiar and comforting, had become a place of isolation and dread, a space where the perfect life she had maintained so carefully collided with the terrifying reality of her secret. As the hours wore on, she tried to focus on each moment, blocking out the thoughts of what would come next. She was overwhelmed by exhaustion, but she knew she could not allow herself to pause. Every instinct screamed for help, yet every thought reminded her that seeking it would destroy everything she had built. She moved carefully, following the limited knowledge she had gathered, desperate to manage the situation alone. The tension in the room was suffocating, a heavy weight pressing down on her chest, but she fought to maintain control, to navigate the terrifying unknown as best she could. When the moment finally arrived, it was both surreal and horrifying. She experienced a mix of relief and dread, emotions so intense that they blurred together into a confusing, overwhelming storm. She held the newborn close, the small life trembling in her hands, and for a fleeting instant, a wave of instinctual protectiveness surged through her. But it was quickly replaced by fear, by the overwhelming awareness of what her secret meant, and the impossibility of revealing it. She could not imagine facing the judgment, the shame, and the consequences that would follow if anyone discovered the truth. In the hours that followed, she acted with calculated precision, trying to hide any evidence that would expose her actions. She cleaned surfaces, disposed of materials, and arranged objects in a way that would avoid suspicion. Every movement was deliberate, every thought focused on concealment. She recorded nothing, confessed to no one, and allowed no sign of panic to escape. Yet beneath the careful exterior, fear gnawed at her, a constant reminder of the danger that loomed over her life. The night that had begun in silence ended with a heavy, suffocating sense of dread, as the secret she had hidden for months became a reality she could no longer deny. By morning, she emerged from her room appearing composed, as if nothing had occurred. She resumed her routines, smiled at her parents, and interacted with friends, concealing the trauma and terror she had endured hours before. Yet the darkness of that night remained, an invisible weight pressing down on her thoughts and actions. The perfect facade had been maintained, but beneath it lay a world of fear, secrecy, and horror, a private reality that no one could imagine, and that would soon set in motion a chain of events that would shock the entire community. It was a neighbor who first noticed something was wrong. A foul, persistent odor began to drift from the backyard, faint at first, but growing stronger over the course of several days. People whispered behind closed doors, unsure of what to make of it, but the smell was unmistakable and disturbing. Concerned, the family reached out to authorities, though no one could have anticipated what they would find. Investigators arrived with cautious professionalism, scanning the property for any signs of danger or neglect. What started as a simple complaint about a strange smell quickly escalated into a scene of shocking discovery. They began with careful observation, taking note of the layout of the yard and the areas where the odor was strongest. Tools were brought in, and the soil was probed with precision. Each movement was deliberate, the investigators aware that a grave discovery could change everything for the family and the surrounding community. When the ground finally gave way to reveal the hidden truth, silence fell over the scene. Buried just beneath the surface, in a shallow grave carefully concealed by layers of dirt and debris, were the remains of a newborn. The shocking reality of the discovery rippled through the officers, a chilling testament to the secret that had been maintained for so long. The investigation that followed unearthed a series of details that were almost too horrifying to process. Evidence from the room where she had given birth revealed a calculated effort to hide the events from anyone who might stumble upon them. Blood-stained clothing had been carefully folded and hidden, and traces of activity were evident in places that only someone living alone could have accessed. Investigators pieced together the timeline from deleted search histories, journal entries, and digital footprints that painted a portrait of fear, isolation, and mounting desperation. Every new revelation deepened the sense of shock and disbelief. Neighbors came forward with what they had seen or suspected, their testimonies adding layers of context to an already chilling story. Some had noticed the frequent absences, the withdrawn demeanor, or the unusual precautions she had taken to remain hidden. Others spoke of subtle signs that, in hindsight, pointed to a deeper truth that no one had dared confront at the time. The contrast between the image she presented in public and the reality that had occurred in private was stark and haunting. It became clear that this was not a momentary lapse, but a meticulously hidden sequence of events, driven by fear, secrecy, and an obsession with preserving appearances. Forensic analysis added further weight to the case. Time-stamped photographs, medical records, and the examination of the shallow grave provided a precise picture of what had happened. Each discovery, each piece of evidence, reinforced the chilling reality that the life she had carried in secrecy had ended tragically. The meticulous planning, the concealment, and the desperate measures to hide the newborn underscored a level of fear and calculation that was difficult for the community to comprehend. What had begun as an idyllic small-town story of a celebrated girl now transformed into a narrative of horror, revealing the terrifying consequences of secrets kept too long and the darkness that can lie behind even the most perfect of facades. The trial drew attention from every corner of the community. People who had once admired her now found themselves grappling with disbelief, struggling to reconcile the image of the charming, accomplished girl they had known with the horrifying reality of her actions. Courtrooms were packed with spectators, journalists, and law enforcement, each eager to witness the unfolding of a case that had shaken the town to its core. As the proceedings began, every piece of evidence, every testimony, and every revelation was scrutinized, revealing a story more complex and chilling than anyone could have imagined. Prosecutors presented a narrative that emphasized calculation and concealment. They detailed her actions leading up to the birth, the deliberate steps she had taken to hide her pregnancy, and the extreme measures she employed to keep her secret. Investigators described the scene in her room, the shallow grave in the backyard, and the meticulously deleted online searches that provided insight into her state of mind. Each element reinforced the idea that she had acted with forethought, that this was not a momentary lapse but a series of intentional choices made in fear and desperation. The prosecution's case was precise, presenting a picture of a girl whose obsession with her image had driven her to commit acts that no one in her community could have predicted. The defense painted a different picture, emphasizing her youth, vulnerability, and fear. They described her as a frightened teenager trapped in circumstances she could not fully comprehend, overwhelmed by anxiety and panic. They highlighted the isolation she had experienced, the secrecy she had felt compelled to maintain, and the psychological strain of carrying such a heavy burden alone. They argued that her actions, while tragic, were the result of extreme fear and desperation rather than malice, attempting to provide context for a community struggling to understand how someone so seemingly perfect could make such devastating choices. Throughout the trial, 9 shocking revelations emerged, each one more disturbing than the last. Investigators disclosed her extensive online searches for ways to conceal a pregnancy, the hidden journal entries documenting her fear and anxiety, the shallow grave carefully prepared in the backyard, and the blood-stained clothing she had attempted to hide. Time-stamped photographs revealed her efforts to maintain appearances despite her circumstances, while neighbors' testimonies illustrated the subtle signs of distress that had gone unnoticed for months. Medical records confirmed the timeline of events, and deleted messages to friends revealed her inner turmoil. The combination of these details painted a picture of meticulous planning under the shadow of terror, a calculated concealment intertwined with profound fear. When the verdict was finally delivered, it reverberated through the town like a shockwave. The girl who had once stood on stage, crowned for her beauty and accomplishments, now faced the full weight of the law. The courtroom was silent as the consequences were announced, the reality of the case leaving an indelible mark on everyone present. Families, friends, and neighbors struggled to process the events, grappling with the horrifying knowledge that a life of promise had been overshadowed by fear, secrecy, and tragic choices. What remained was a chilling reminder of how quickly perfection can mask despair, and how the hidden actions of one individual can ripple outward, leaving a community forever changed.